Okay, so good day. Today's daf is Gittin daf Lamed Vav. We're near the bottom of Lamed Hey Amabet, and we learned yesterday the machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Papa. Rav Nachman said that if you are trying to annul a vow and you go to a chacham, you don't need to detail all the circumstances of the neder. He's concerned that actually you'll end up omitting some circumstance. The chacham will annul the vow. You'll think that everything is okay, and so you can act on that annulment. And in fact, it won't be. And so as a result, he says, you know what, best not to have to detail all the circumstances. You just give the details of the neder, and that will be sufficient. And then that annulment will cover you. And Rav Papa says, no, we're worried that there will be situations where we don't want any chacham to come and annul the vow, and will be and if we don't have the one who made the vow say what the details of the vow is, the chacham will think, oh, okay, the person made a vow and it should get undone, and the vow will be undone, even though the context is such as we have it in the Mishnah that we've been talking about, where the wife, the ex-wife or the widow, makes the vow to say that she has not been paid her ketubah, and she's, instead of making, where we decided that we're not going to allow her to make a shvuah because of the seriousness of the shvuah, and instead we're going to have her make a neder based on what the orphans suggest, or based on whatever the orphans want, that she's going to vow that if in fact she had benefit from her ketubah, that in that case she will not do some action. Maybe she won't have some particular kind of food or something like that. And so in that way, we'll be sure, the orphans can be sure that in fact she has not in fact benefited. And if we allow her to annul the vow simply by mentioning the vow to a chacham without giving the full details of the circumstance, so then there's no real threat of the vow. That vow doesn't really help us much, because she could just go ahead and undo it. So that's the machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Papa. And now we're going to cite a question using a Mishnah. This Mishnah is from Bechoros Daf Mem Hey Amabet, and we are 1, 2, 3, 5 lines up from the bottom of Lamed Hey Amabet. And then Gemara asks tonight, we have a Mishnah, Hanose Nashim B'Aveira Pasul, that if and we're talking about, Rashi helps us out here, last of the narrow lines in Rashi, Kohen Hanose Nashim Psulot Lakuna, Pasul Avodah, that when we say Hanose Nashim B'Aveira Pasul, we're talking about a Kohen who marries somebody who's not allowed to marry a Kohen. And so that's the Aveira. And Pasul, he is disqualified from being able to serve in the Beit HaMikdash, Ad Sheyidor Hana, until he makes a vow not to benefit from this wife. But Tani Allah, and it's on this that we have a brisa, Noder V'Oved Yored Umegaresh, that there's basically a 4-part process. First, he makes a neder. Then he's allowed to perform the service in the Beit HaMikdash, Yored, then he comes down from having performed it, Umagaresh, and then he divorces the wife. Meaning, as Rashi puts it, Oved Avoda Afal Pi, second to last line in the Rashi on Lamed Hamabet, that he can do the worship, in the service in the Beit HaMikdash, Afal Pi Shadayin Lo Garsha. So even though he's married to the woman to whom he's not allowed to be married to, by swearing off and by making a vow, that says that he is not going to benefit from that woman at all, that is going to be sufficient for him to effectively continue to serve, even though he has not yet divorced her. And then what will happen is, after he performs the service, because he has the opportunity to perform the service to the Beit HaMikdash at this moment. So then after he performs the service, as it says, continuing in Rashi, Yored, he'll go down Minha Avodah, from having done the service, La'akar Shasiyah, after he finishes, Umegarsha, and then he'll divorce her. So that's how he can continue to work in the Beit HaMikdash, notwithstanding the fact that his wife is still somebody who is prohibited for him to be married to. Now, if you tell me that in fact that there is no general obligation to detail the nature of a vow, which is of course Rav Nachman's position, so Lakush Dilma's Azil Lagabe Chacham Misharile. Don't we need to worry that this Kohen will go to a Chacham and have that Chacham undo the vow that he did, that he said that he wasn't going to benefit from his wife? That seems to be a real problem. Meaning, how can we allow the vow to be the mechanism for him to perform the service? Because maybe he'll undo the vow. So the Gemara answers, as we turn to Lama Vav and Aleph, that we're going to make him make the vow in public. Well, now we've seen this just, I think even yesterday, that that there are some who say that if you make a vow in public with among a minion, for example, so then you're not allowed to annul the vow. But that wasn't a universal view. Some people say that you can annul a vow that's made, even a vow that's made in public. So what do you do in that situation? So there's another level that we can take this to, that it's not just that you make a neder in front of the public, but you make the neder conditional on the public's effectively agreement. As Rashi says, Al Das Rabim, top Rashi, Kach Yomru Lo, that this is what they say to him, Hare Anu Madirin Otcha Al Datenu, that we are going to force you to make this neder on our agreement, or on our consensus. And so as a result, that person won't have the ability to undo it. There are various ways to understand that. Either that this is, by inviting more people involved, we're creating a new level, or from a practical standpoint, you would need to get permission from everybody in order to undo it. And obviously that permission is not going to be available. So to Amra Maimar, and now how do we know that this is something that exists? Because Hilchasa, we have a Maimar saying that the halacha is as follows: Afiu lamanda amar neder shehuda berabim yesh lo hafara al das rabim ein lo hafara. That when it comes to making a vow in public, even the one who says that you can annul such a vow, that person still will say that if you make the vow based on based on the knowledge and the agreement of the public, well, that is not going to be subject to annulment. And the Gemara further qualifies that when we say that it's not subject to annulment, we're talking about something where there's a permission associated with it, but not a avaldol dvar mitzvah yesh lo hafar. But if in fact you're actually performing a mitzvah, well, then we're going to say that that in that situation you can undo the vow, and we're going to give an example. Makre Dardike, because there was a person who would, read out for children. It was essentially a teacher. The Adri Rav Acha Al Das Rabim, that Rav Acha made a vow based on the public knowledge, public agreement, and and what was that vow? As Rashi says, third line, the adre shelo yilmod om tinokot, that this teacher shouldn't be able to teach anymore. Why? To have a pasha binoki, because he was negligent in his treatment of the children. As Rashi says in the next Rashi, beginning of the fourth line, chovatan yoter midai, he would hit them too much. So as a result, that's why they initially said it. But Vahadri Ravina ended up annulling the vow and getting this teacher back because delo ishtakach the diet kavase, that there was no one who he wasn't able to find anybody who was as careful as him in the way that he taught. So he didn't have the best methods, but the children were able to be very careful and know exactly what to do. So I'm not sure whether that was the right decision or not, but in any event, the point is that when a mitzvah is involved, so even if, and this was a context of a mitzvah, because we want to make sure that the Torah teaching of our children is in fact a mitzvah. So then, as a result, in that context, even a vow made al das rabim, based on the knowledge and agreement of the public. So then that also can still be annulled. Okay. So now we get to that concludes our discussion of the first takana mentioned in our Mishnah, namely the takana that says that we are going to have a widow make a neder in order for her. And this is a Rabbi Gamliel's takana, that we're going to make allow a widow to make a neder in order for her to collect her ketubah. Now we get to the second of the two mentioned in by Rabbi Gamliel, and the three total that are mentioned in our Mishnah. And v'ha'edim chosman ala get mipnei tikkun ha'olam. We said that Rabbi Gamliel said that in fact you needed to have witnesses sign on the get, and that was for the benefit of the society. So the Gemara wonders, I don't understand. You're telling me that this is some kind of special rule that we're trying to make the world a better place. But doraisahu, it's a requirement in the Torah that in fact this needs to be written, because that when it comes to writing, you need to write it in a book and sign it. And this was in the context of, now this particular reference was in a reference to Yirmiyahu buying a field, but the idea is that the Torah is suggesting, and here it's really more Tanakh, is suggesting that we need to have signatures on it. And so doesn't that show that this is sort of a biblical requirement? Why are you telling us that this is a rabbinic requirement and it was done for the benefit of society? So I'm a Rabba lo tzricha lo Rabbi Elazar. No, when Rabba says that this is all about Rabbi Elazar, because what does he say? He does not require witnesses on the writing of the get. Amar edi misirikarti. He's the one who says that the witnesses who to the delivery of the get are the ones who make the get actually take effect. And therefore, takinu rabbanan edi chatima. And so as a result, the rabbis added this takana that there should also be witnesses on who sign the document itself, in order to benefit the world. Because sometimes the witnesses who actually watch the delivery of the get will die. Or maybe those witnesses who watch the get delivered will go overseas. And the bottom line is that when you have somebody's signature, you are not limited to the people themselves. You actually have not only the ability of using the people themselves, of course, they will be valid witnesses too, but you also have the ability to have other people who recognize the signatures also be involved. And so as a result, we now have more people capable of confirming the validity of this get. And so that is why, even according to Rebbe Elazar, we're going to say that you need to have witnesses on the get itself. Yosef Amar, Afil Tamer Rebbe Meir. No, you don't have to say, according to Rebbe Yosef, you don't have to say that it's Rebbe Elazar who says that the witnesses that matter are the ones who see it delivered. You can even say that when we're talking about the fact that you need to have signatures on the get, it's according to Rebbe Meir. And of course, Rebbe Meir is the one who says that it's those signatures who make the get effective. So if that's true, what in fact was the takana? Well, here's the takana. The takana was actually that they should write their names literally, their actual explicit names. That's what they should write on the get, in order for the benefit of the world. Because this is what we have in a brisa. Ani ploni chatamti aid, and that originally they would just write and literally the words ani ploni, I am this person, chatamti aid, and I am signed as a witness. And so as a result, they actually wouldn't write their name. They would just write those words. And then how would people validate them? Well, because kasher. And if everybody knows this person's signature because they see the signature elsewhere, so then it would be a valid get. And if they don't have proof of this guy's signature, so then it wouldn't be a good get. So Rabban Gamliel takana gedola hitkinu sheyiyu mafarshin shmosein begittin mimnei tikanolam. And so Rabban Gamliel would then say, no, look, you got to have them actually write their name, and that would be the key. As Rashi says, shmoseyim mifarshe shmoseyim. We take a look 1, 2, 5, 6 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi on Lamed Vav and Aleph. Ruvain. So Mefarshei Shmoteim, Ruvain or Shimon. They would write down their name, whether it was Ruvain or Shimon or whoever it was, because Me'ikara lo hayachot min ella ani ploni chatamti eid. They would just literally write the words ani ploni chatamti eid. I am this person, and I sign as a witness. Below hayad nokev shmo, and they wouldn't actually even mention their names. So as a result, that's what that could be, according to Rav Yosef. How even according to Rav Meir, who says that the witnesses who are signing on the get are the key ones. This would be, it could still be, according to him, that we have such a takana, and the takana is just that they should actually write their explicit names and not just the fact that they witness the writing and the signing of the get. Okay, uvesimna lo. Well, 1 second. We just said that the takana was that they actually had to write their names, which suggests that you wouldn't be allowed to use some kind of insignia for your name, some kind of sign for your name. But how Rav Tzayer Kavra? Well, 1 second. Rav used to draw a fish as his name. The Rabbi Chanina Tzayer Charusa, and Rabbi Chanina would draw a palm branch. Rav Chisda Samech. Rav Chisda would write just the letter Samech, but Rav Hoshaya Ayin, and Rav Hoshaya would just write the letter Ayin. Rabba bar Rav Huna Tzayer Machusa, and Rabba bar Rav Huna would draw the sail of a boat. And so as a result, it seems like they would use these signatures in formal documents that would be permitted. Well, shiny Rabbana. No, the rabbis could be different. Debeki and Simanayu, because everybody knew their symbols. Well, 1 second. Mi Karabamayavkinu. Well, I don't understand. Everybody who uses something as their symbol, there has to be a starting place where their symbols can become known. So the Gemara explains Bediske, it would be through their letter writing, through their other correspondence, meaning that because rabbis were very often asked questions, and they would be give answers or communicate via the written word. So as a result, it was easy for them to develop a well-known mark that would indicate who they were, and so as a result, that will be sufficient for them, but an ordinary person would need to use his or her name. Okay, so that is the end of our discussion of takana number 2 in our Mishnah. Again, there were 3 takanot, and the third takana is Hillel's takana of the Prus Bowl. And so now we're going to start that discussion today, and we're going to continue it tomorrow. So let's see what we've got to say about it today. So Hillel Hiskin Prus Bowl. Hillel established the Prus Bowl. Tanan Hassam. So we learned in the Mishnah, Prus Bowl Eino Mishame. If you have a Prus Bowl, you do not have to give up collecting of the loan. This was one of the things that Hillel Zaken established. Because what did Hillel see? Hillel saw that people were not making loans to one another during, as the year of Shemitah approached. And so as a result, and as a result, they were violating what is written in the Torah. That you should not have an evil thought in your heart, that as the seventh year comes close, you should avoid making loans. You should still make loans. That's what the Torah specifically teaches in Dvarim Perek Tesvav Pasuk Tet. So Amad Behiskim Prosbol. So as a result, Hillel established the prosbol. B'zehu gufo shel prosbol, and this is what the prosbol is. This is the key element of the prosbol. This is the body of the prosbol. Mosrani, and these are the words that you would write. Mosrani lachem ploni dayanin shivamakom ploni. I hereby give to you or convey to you, and identifying who you are, the judges that are in this place, that are in the specifically named place, shekolchov sheyeshli eitzel ploni, that every debt that I have that is owed to me by this other person, she'agbenu kol zman she'ertzeh, that I should be able to collect it whenever I want. Dayanin chosmin lamata, and the judges sign below. O ha'edim, or witnesses can sign below. Umiika midi oraisa mashamta shviyis the Hiskin Hillel delo mashamta. Well, 1 second. How is it possible that Hillel can do that? The Torah can tell us that the seventh year is supposed to cancel a loan, and Hillel's going to establish that it won't be canceled. And as Rashi puts it, v'hitkin Hillel delo tishamet v'akar davar min Torah. He is literally uprooting a mitzvah in the Torah, it seems like. So now we're going to Gemara answer. So Amar Abaye b'shviyas bisman hazeh. Answer, no, the key answer is, or at least one potential answer is that really shviyas in today's day, we're talking about shviyas today, and v'Rebbehi, and this is according to Rebbe. The Tanya Rebbe Omer v'zed devar hashmita shamot. That when the Torah says, and this is a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Tesvav pasuk Bet, that when the person is going to relinquish their loans, but it uses a double language of hashmita shamot. So bishtei shmitos hakasam medaber. It highlights that there are two kinds of shmita. Achashmita karka v'achashmita ksafim. One is relating to the ground, one to what grows from the ground, and the fact that we have to leave the ground fallow on the seventh year. And the second one is this idea of loans being terminated and actually giving up the collection of those monies. Bisman, and what is that connection? Why are these two different kinds of shmita being connected? Bisman sha'ata meshamit karka, ata meshamit ksafim. That when we have the shmita that applies to the ground, so too you'll have the shmita that applies to the ksafim, and you'll have to give up all your loans. But bisman she'iyata meshamit karka, iyata meshamit ksafim. But when you don't have, on the other hand, when you don't have the biblical requirement to relinquish land, the meaning to let the land lie fallow, so then you don't have the requirement to give up the loans. And so, of course, that is our status today, because the law of Shemitah does not apply today on the biblical level because of the exile of the Jewish people. And so, as a result, and indeed, even when the Beit HaMikdash was standing, when the second Beit HaMikdash was standing, and the laws of Shemitah were applied, they actually didn't apply from a biblical standpoint because we did not have the halachot of Yovel. And accordingly, in Hillel's view, the law of relinquishing debts did not apply from a biblical standpoint throughout the second Beis HaMikdash. And so it was basically ever since some point in the entire second Beis HaMikdash, when we had a significant presence outside of the land of Israel. So as a result, that for that reason, we didn't have biblical Shemitah with respect to Karka. And so as a result, the Shemitah with respect to Ksafim was also not biblical, and there wasn't a formal requirement. But now, at V'hiskin V'takinu, as we turn to Lamed Vav Amabet, we have Abaye is continuing his answer on behalf of how this could happen. So v'takinu rabbanan detachmate zecher l'shviyas, that we would still cancel loans as a reminder of the importance of Shemitah, and we wanted to keep Shemitah in mind. So Ra Hillel v'sheninu ha'am milahavod zeh et zeh, and even though we had this biblical requirement that they should, the people should release their loans in the seventh year, people were stopping to lend money. Ahmad Behiskin Prose Bowl. So as a result, he got up and created the Prose Bowl. Now, Tosfos asks a very good question here. Well, why don't we have this same thing with respect to Yovel? We don't actually observe Yovel today. And so let's take a look. Top full Tosfos in Lamed Vav Bet. V'ha delo tikun takun nami Yovel. Zecher Yovel. Why didn't we also similarly have a takana to observe the Yovel as a remembrance for the Yovel? Mishum de'ein rov tzibur yecholon la'amod ba, because we would not be able to survive based on that. It would not be something. It would be a takana that couldn't be accepted by the public. So liyaser ba'avodas karka shtei shanim ritzufot. That if we were to try and prohibit for 2 full years, as it is, we have such difficulty trying to get people to observe the Shemitah. If we did it for 2 straight years, that would be a real problem. And so as a result, we don't do this with respect to a Shemitah, but when it comes to, we don't do that with respect to Yovel, but when it comes to Shemitah, so then we'll allow it to proceed. Well, 1 second. Is there something that that we have that where the Torah says that a loan is not canceled, again because Shemitah Bisman Hazeh, it doesn't exist because there's no biblical Shemitah with respect to the ground, and so as a result, there's no biblical Shemitah with respect to Ksafim either, with respect to loans. Monetary loans. So I don't understand. But Takina Rabbanan Tishamit, and we're going to have the rabbis declare that there's going to be a that the loan is going to be canceled. And Rashi asks the question in a very nice way. Third line in Rashi, V'amar Rabbanan Tishamit v'nimsa halova gazlan al pm, that it seems like the borrower is going to end up being a thief as a result of what the rabbis have decreed, because he's not going to pay back, but in fact the Torah is telling him that he should pay back. So how could we allow that to happen? So Abaye answers, Amar Abaye, Sheva al Tasehu. Actually, we can say that it's Sheva al Taseh, that we sit and we don't do, and that is the explanation. And so now we have one full answer to the question of how is it possible that we can have a Prose Bowl when it seems like this would be undermining a biblical mitzvah. And the answer is it doesn't undermine a biblical mitzvah. It's a rabbinic mitzvah that we're talking about, and we can have that rabbinic mitzvah because of the concept of Sheva al Tasa. As Rashi puts it, take a look at the end of the third line of Rashi, Sheva al Tasa, v'halo v'hazeh, this borrower, Shev, ubitel, he sits and he nullifies the loan. Ve'eno oseh ha-mitzvah liproa et chovo, he does not do the mitzvah of repaying the debt. V'lo akarle b'yadayim, but as a result, he is not affirmatively undoing, and the rabbis are not affirmatively undoing a mitzvah. The kihai gavna, and in this kind of situation, mutar la'akor davar min Torah. The rabbis are allowed to uproot something from the Torah, just like kagon, shofar, velulav, v'domein, just like shofar and lulav, which we don't observe on Shabbos, on Rosh Hashanah, and Shabbos on Sukkot. And as is taught, Isha Rabba, Delo Akira Biadayim, these kinds of uprootings are not affirmative uprootings, and so as a result, we'll allow it. And then we have, so now that was answer number one to this whole series of questions, but we actually have a second answer to this. So Rava Amar, Rava says, actually, we can say the following. And so what do we say? Hefker, based in Haya Hefker, that when it comes to to uh, um, to monetary issues with respect to Beit Din, so they have the ability to declare that something is considered hefker, meaning that it's considered ownerless, or to transfer the ownership. Well, how do we know that? So we're going to offer two possible sources for it. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, source number one is offered by Rabbi Yitzchak. Minayin shehefker based in haya hefker. How do I know that that rule is true? That what the rabbis say or a court says is ownerless is ownerless. Because it says in Ezra, "V'kol asher lo yavo l'shloshos hayamim katzas hasarim v'hazkenim yecharam kol ruchusho v'hu yibadel mikahal hagola." And whoever does not come within 3 days, as proposed by the princes and the elders, all his property shall be confiscated, and he shall be separated from the congregation of the exile. And so the fact that it specifically references confiscation highlights that the Anshe Knesset Gedola have the ability to confiscate funds from people. And Rabbi Eliezer Amar Mahacha, Rabbi Eliezer offers a second source. Rather, it's the source is from Yoshua. Eile hanachalot asher nachalu Elazar Kohen v'Yoshua bin Nun v'Rashei Ha'avot. That these are the these are the inheritances that Elazar the Kohen and Yoshua bin Nun and the leaders of the tribes all apportion. Now, in second, note here it says v'Rashei Ha'avot, but v'chima inyan rashim etzel avot. What is the story with the use of the word roshim, like the heads, by avot, which are the patriarchs? Inyan, and take a look at Rashi. It's about 15 lines down in the narrow lines. Havalei lamichtav v'rashei hamatot. It shouldn't have said rashei ha'avot, the heads of the fathers. It should have said the heads of the tribes. So why did it say the heads of the fathers? So lomar lecha ma avos manchila as b'neihem kol mashayir. So just as a father has the ability to decide how his children are going to inherit, afrashim manchilim ha'am kol mashayir. So too do the leaders of the tribes, namely does the Anshe Knesset Gedola and the various courts have the ability to do what they please with the funds of the public. So that is the second possible answer to the question of how is it possible for Hillel Hazaken to institute prosbul. That it could be that the institution is simply based on the concept of hefker based in hefker. So ibaylahu. So now we're going to ask a question: Hiskin Hillel prosbul l'darehu detakin odilmu l'dare alma nami takin. When Hillel instituted it, was he instituting it just for his own generation, or was he instituting it for all generations? Well, l'may nafkamina, who cares what his original intention was? So levatule. It makes a difference if we were to want to eliminate the rule, because amrat l'darehu detakim mevatlina lay. Because if you say he was just doing it for his own generation, well, then we can eliminate the concept of prosbul. But if you say that he was doing it forever, ha ain based in yachol vatel divrei beitin chavero ela im kain gadol imenu b'chachma v'inyan. In order for one court to override another court, you need if the first court was working for a permanent rule, well, then that permanent rule would require a greater court in wisdom and number in order to undo it. So which one is it? Was it done just for that generation, or was it done for all generations? So Tashma, come and listen as we try to answer the question. To Amar Shmuel, what did Shmuel say? Lo kasvina prosbul ella I bevei dina desura I bevei dina denarda. In order to do a prosbul, you have to be in the court either of Surah, which was Rav's court, or in the court of Narda, which is Shmuel's court. And so that implies that you need to be only in certain courts. Now, if you say that actually Hillel did this prose bowl for every generation, maybe you should be able to do it in every kind of court. So Dilma ki takin Hillel l'dari alma kagon beidina today. No, maybe it was that when Hillel instituted it, he was only instituting it in courts like his own, namely the top courts in that age. Ucharav Ami, Rav Asi da Alime Lav Kuye Mamona, and like the courts of Rav Ami and Rav Asi, which are specifically powerful enough to decide that something is, is hefker. But but in other courts, maybe they would not have that kind of strength in order to do it. And so as a result, you can't necessarily derive from this cited statement of Shmuel whether or not this was for all generations or just the first generation. So Tashma, another attempt. Da'amar Shmuel said, Ha prosbola ulbana didainehu, that this concept of prosbol is the ulbana of judges. Now, what does ulbana mean? We're going to see that what it means in a moment. We'll just assume that it's negative at the moment, but we'll see that we're going to ask that and that'll be the conclusion. But we're going to ask that as a question. But we'll just assume the answer that we're going to give very shortly for our current purposes, and say that it means that it's it's essentially chutzpah, unnerving. It's an affront to judges everywhere, and is what Shmuel is saying. And if I had enough power, I would get rid of it. Avatline, the Gemara asks, are you going to get rid of it? Well, you can only do that if you were greater in wisdom and number. And so doesn't the fact that Shmuel is suggesting that he wanted to do this show that the prose bowl was only for Hillel's time and only for his generation and not for every generation, and that was going to be the basis so that he would not have to use a greater court in number and wisdom? No, Hakikamer, this is what he means. No, he was saying that if I had enough strength and was actually a stronger court than Hillel, if I had greater numbers and greater strength than Hillel, then I would abolish it. So again, not necessarily a proof in either direction. But Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman actually, on the other hand, loved prose bowl, and he said, and so as a result, he said he would affirm it. 1 second, if you're saying that he was going to confirm it, it already is confirmed. Doesn't that show that it must have been that he was only intending Hillel was only intending it for that generation, and that Rav Nachman was saying this because he wanted to make it something that would be also true in his generation? No, that doesn't have to be either. Hakikamar, Ema Bay, Milsa, but the Afal Gab, the low Kasav, Kakasav Dami. I know when I say that I wanted to establish it, I wanted to expand it. I wanted to say that even if the prose bowl was not written, I want to treat it as if it was written. And so as a result, that's the story. Now, again, going back to the word ulbana, ibailahu, hi ulbana, lishna de chutzpahu, is it a language of affront, of being obnoxious and not being appropriate, or is it a language of convenience, of being nice? Well, 1 second, if it's so nice, why would Shmuel want to undo it? So thankfully, Rashi helps us understand that. So Rashi is 6, 9, 10, 12, about 15, 16 lines up in the Rashi, in the narrow lines. Lishna dinichusa, lo asu el nachas hadayanim, that the purpose of establishing it, according to this understanding of Ulbana, was that it was in order to make the lives of judges easier. Because if, in fact, every loan needed to be collected before Shvius, well, then judges right before Shvius would be extraordinarily busy because everybody would bring their claim to try and collect the loan before the end of the year. Shelo tavo Shvius the Tishmitei, and because they wouldn't want Shvias to come and have their loan canceled. Hilkach ayasher chayil avatlinai. But now maybe the Shmuel is saying that we don't need that convenience for our judges, and so as a result, if I had the strength, he would actually go ahead and nullify it. So what is it? Do we say that it's about being inappropriate, or is it being appropriate? Is it for convenience? So Tashma, the Amar Ula aluva kala shezinza the karav kupata. That Ula refers to a bride who has who's unfaithful, who has nus, who has an immoral relation, while the karav kupata, while she's still in the bridal chamber. Obviously, that is not a positive statement. That is not a convenient statement. That is a statement of chutzpah, of being obnoxious, of being inappropriate. And so, and what is the context of that? Of that Ula made this statement, because he's talking about actually the Jewish people. If we take a look at Rashi 3, 6, 9, 10 lines up in the narrow lines, Shejinta B'Karav Kupata, but Shechina v'Yisrael b'Sinai, that when the Shechina was with and the Jewish people were still at Sinai, Asu es ha'egel. The Jewish people did the Egel HaZahav. So here we were in effect marrying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and yet we did this terrible thing and brought the Egel HaZahav. Sha'arei lo nasu misinai ad la'achar kamas HaMishkan. We didn't actually leave Har Sinai until after the Mishkan was built. B'shana Shniya, in the second year. D'ksiv vayhi b'shana hashenit b'chodesh hasheni v'yisu b'nei Yisrael l'maseihem mimidbar Sinai. So we see I guess depending on whether you're in Eretz Yisrael or the United States, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I think the parsha said that we left Har Sinai, and so as a result, the point is that until then. We were there. So we were at Har Sinai when we brought the Egel HaZahav. How obnoxious was that? So, and again, so now, Amarav Mari, Bra de Rav de Bas Shmuel, Mikra, what's the source that reflects this statement by Ula? And this is Rav Mari, the son of Shmuel's daughter. Ad shehamelech b'msibo, Nirdina Tanrecho, that the pasuk in Shira Shirim references that while the king was still at his banquet, my perfume gave out its fragrance. Now, Amar Rava Adayan Chavivusa Hu Gaban. That Rava says that this shows that how much Hashem loves us. Diksiv Nasan below Ksiv Hisruach. Because the truth is that while the king was at his banquet, that refers to us being at Har Sinai, and our perfume gave out our fragrance is how inappropriate our behavior was, that we effectively stunk up the place, and yet the language of the Shira Shirim suggests that it was a pleasant fragrance, and so because it uses the term Natan, that we should get, that it gave out. So Tanu Rabbanan, and so as a result, we see that in fact that how much Hashem loves the Jewish people, because even though we stunk, Hashem was kind enough to use the term Natan for us. And another situation where we have this term Ulbana that is suggesting an insult. So Tana Rabbanan, Hane'elavin ve'enan olvin. If you get insulted, but you don't turn around and insult. Shomen cherpatan ve'ein mashivin. If you hear something that is again a disgrace to you, and you don't answer. Osin ma'ahava usmeichin b'yisurim. You do God's will with love, and you are happy even when you are being afflicted. About those people, the Torah says, "This is a pasuk in Shoftim, in Sefer Shoftim, that those who love God should be as the sun going forth in its might. And so with that bracha, we should learn from this lesson that we should be able to recognize that even as words may harm us, that we shouldn't use them to harm others. And God willing, we should continue in our words of Torah as we tomorrow, God willing, will learn about the source of Pruzbul. And with that, we'll conclude for today. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.